What is the future of booze / alcohol?
Some of the biggest companies in the world are the drinks companies. Why do people drink? Is it for the buzz of getting drunk, or is it for the taste of the product? Like, it's still glamorous, isn't it? Generations coming through are ditching going to the pub. They can get drugs for cheaper, which is just mental.
Tom Seward is a fourth-generation hotelier, entrepreneur and branding wizard. Set up 3 businesses, Anning's Cider, Capes Coffee and the Min's Vitamin brand. Tom is a hospitality, food and drink expert.
Tom Seward, what do you do?
I'm trying to think. Anning's is and was the fruit cider company that I founded in 2012. In terms of setting up a business, it seems like like the Stone Age.
How did COVID affect your businesses?
It was absolute chaos, to be honest.
Do you ever think, what if?
Yeah, I do it all the time. But
How do you think your industry will change in the next 5 years?
I think we'll see.
And what have been the biggest challenges for you when setting up these businesses?
I think
How do you market hotels?
people used to turn up to check in, and as they were checking in, they'd book for the same week next year. It's not quite like that anymore.
How have booking engines disrupted the industry?
Oh, massively. Probably more than anything else in its history. It was a real headache for the industry.
What advice would you give to Tom Seward 20 years ago?
Not to worry about it like as much as I probably did at the time.
Do you think you're successful?
Perfect, well done. Right, Tom Seward, what do you do?
A bit of everything really, but mainly at the moment make lots of coffees, and hopefully if the sun comes out, make lots of ice cream as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. So what's your business?
My business is Capes. It's an ice cream kiosk, coffee kiosk on the seafront in Sidmouth in Devon, and it's just coming up to its first birthday of opening.
Happy birthday.
Happy
Thanks.
birthday.
Yeah.
Is it this weekend?
No, this weekend, Bonnie's birthday party, the puppy.
Oh.
Got to have a dog for socials these days, so we're celebrating her on Sunday, and then because we've got a big dog following as well, and then next weekend we're having a party for Capes.
Easter weekend.
What are you doing for the birthday party?
Probably some cakes and doing a couple of prize draws as well, and a few bits and bobs. Nothing major, but just celebrating the locals as well as the actual business itself.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's throw it right back. You know, you're in the hospitality industry,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Yeah.
Capes is your coffee shop, but then also a big part of your role, your job is the hotel side of things.
Yeah.
Do you want to just talk a little bit about that and explain that for everybody?
Yeah, sure. So I'm technically a fourth generation hotelier, I guess. So my great uncle converted a block of flats or a section of flats in the seafront here to a hotel in 1951. So he ran that with my great auntie Madge, and then my grandparents took over from them and worked alongside them. And then my parents bought them out in the early 90s. And yeah, it's a ever evolving and continually moving, challenging business comprised of 2 larger hotels and then a pub with rooms, so technically an inn. Mm-hmm. And yeah, never a dull day. And I basically have been back at the company for 6 years now. But I've worked on and off since I was about 13, 14. Yeah. Started as most people do, KPing, so washing up, kitchen portering that is, and in the industry it's called KPing. Yeah. Lots of other derogatory names for it because it is well known to be the hardest position.
Go on, give us one.
Some people call them people dish pigs. It's amazing, and it's honestly one of some of my fondest memories of starting out KPing, because it's like such a central part of the kitchen and often quite underappreciated. There's guys that do it all their lives and people that do it all their lives for their career, but most people that start in the industry will start there, or housekeeping as well.
What's your earliest memory of the hotels?
Really, like from even younger than the working age, really, because we lived opposite the business, so my parents both worked in it long hours. My dad did the cooking and then also the books and accounting and that sort of things, and then my mum did the front of house housekeeping. So between them they kind of ran it, and that meant a lot of time kind of over the road on our own in the house. We're like looking after ourselves, but you know, not in a kind of you're a bad kind of way, but like we're very independent as children. So earliest memories would be kind of being over in the hotel and just probably getting in everyone's way, but
running around the corridors.
Like we had an epic time when the hotel was shut, like
Yeah.
the years when like the mattresses were changed, for example, like we'd pile them all up in the dining room and have a like indoor trampoline fest. And
The best place for hide and seek.
100%. Yeah, it was exceptionally scary in the winter as well, because like there's articles on the walls about ghosts and a town crier ghost that used to haunt the rooms. And so it was always quite cold and a little bit eerie in the winter, but amazing to play in. And then in the summer, like spending time around the staff and the team and being part of that, I definitely think it gave us kind of a good grounding for skills for speaking to people and being around guests and being polite and a little bit older than our years in that sense, me and my siblings. But
was there ever a point when you were younger when you thought, oh, I want to be a part of this?
I think of me and my two siblings, I was always the one that was kind of the keenest on that, and I just kind of fell into it really. From the KP Sync, I then went out front of house and did some waitering and some portering, and then started interacting with the customers. And from that stage onwards, really, it just kind of felt like a natural fit. So I've tried to fight it, but really, I always ended up coming back into the industry or back to here was kind of following kind of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You've never not been around it.
No, not at all.
Like you've literally grown up with it.
Yeah, 100%.
And I guess that's probably the same for your parents as well. Is that
right?
Yeah.
I mean, same for my dad when he was a kid. Him and my uncle kind of grew up in the same house, literally.
Really?
They had a caravan in the car park as well. And probably were even more so independent than we were, and the fact that it was like the early 60s, so things were probably a little bit looser, but they used to like walk to Ladron Bay, and the stories of my dad being left behind by my uncle, and like just having a great time growing up in the town, and the same kind of thing. Yeah, you become part of the furniture, all the staff know you. All the residents know you, people come back, they see you grow up. We've got guys and customers that have been coming since we were kids, and literally others that came when they were children 50, 60 years ago.
Wow.
So it is crazy in that sense.
So again, going right back, the evolution of the hotels, it started off as 2 flats that were renovated and turned into
the Kingswood Hotel.
The Kingswood Hotel.
And
that's one of 4, is that right?
Well, it was a bit complicated. So my parents expanded along the seafront and bought the Elizabeth, which was 2 doors down.
And they're 2 separate hotels.
They were 2 separate hotels,
the Kingswood
and the Elizabeth.
And the Elizabeth.
Yeah, and then Duke's, the pub or inn, was bought in 2003.
Okay.
And then in 2008, the Devoran, which was the pink hotel, the middle one that kind of split the 2 hotels up. They acquired that, and then over a few years knocked them together to make the Kingswood, which is now a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, they're kind of like a lot more now than previously. They kind of have their own demographic individually, but all kind of still serve the same purpose. So
do they cater specifically to different types of people, or is it?
They used to do. It depends on the season. Sidmouth's kind of a town of 2 halves, really.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the southwest is really as well. Like you look at Cornwall, North Devon. It's kind of boom or bust in a lot of towns. So we kind of see the retired grey kind of market a lot more in the off season, shoulder months. So they'll come on shopping breaks or coach parties. And in the summer, you do see a lot more families, people coming for weddings, so like shorter breaks, but people coming to the coast. We saw a lot of that in COVID as well, obviously. That was a big influx of people coming to Sidmouth and South West.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then you've got Capes alongside that, which is on the seafront, you could effectively say.
Yeah, exactly. So that's right at the end of the forecourt of Duke. So it's literally, I don't know, if you had a good arm, if you're a proper cricketer, you could probably throw a stone literally, like, you know, it's a bit of a cliche, but you could throw a stone into the sea from the front of it. It's an amazing location, and pretty fortunate to have been able to acquire the lease for it and move in there, get the keys, I think last November, and then gradually just do some work on it. But it's a great spot, a really great spot, and it's kind of been something that I've had in the back of my mind and been really wanting to work towards and getting it up and running for probably 5 or 6 years now. So working on the idea and what it would look like and how it would feel, and the brand name and all that kind of stuff. So,
and that's your baby, that's your
it is,
project,
that's completely
it?
separate from all of it, and kind of hopefully, as much as I love the hotels and Dukes, like this is something that I want to develop and grow, while still kind of being involved at a kind of director level or whatever level it may be within the family business, so to speak.
Okay. So again, we're going back, start of your journey, your first ever position in hospitality, KP. Is that the first thing that anybody would do in hospitality? Is that sort of level one, would you say?
Yeah, I would say more often than not. Like if you're going into like a local pub or a regional hotel or anything other than kind of Michelin star, like you, as a young person in the UK, if you're going into hospitality, that's more than likely where you end up, because you're not having to be interacting with customers. You can stand there and it's relatively low. There's low risk really in terms of stuff going wrong, other than breaking some crockery or cutting yourself if you're chopping some carrots up or whatever it may be. But that's not to say that you can't get very skillful at it. Like people that will go on to work in higher level restaurants, Michelin star restaurants, or etc. They're an integral part of the team and really, really highly valued, because they're the people that can prep a bucket of potatoes in no time. Sorry, I don't know if I should click.
I don't know if you should click. Well, you're allowed to click.
Welcome.
Yeah, so they are like highly, highly valued. We had a Polish KP called Zenon who was with us for 10, 12 years.
Wow.
Him and his wife Janina both moved over here. He was faster at peeling potatoes than the potato rumbler. Like he was just a machine, and she was the same. She would chop buckets and buckets of fruit salad. They're people that are so important, and we always really try and value those people. So starting at that level, it keeps you grounded. It makes you realise what goes into like all different levels of production in the kitchen, but also the same could be said for housekeeping or someone who's a property porter. Like the jobs within the industry that often are frowned upon or looked down as like, oh, that's they're so important. So
that's where you started.
Yeah,
that's where you really start to understand like the back office, I suppose, in the kitchen.
Yeah, so I had a Friday night shift to start with. I actually shared it with one of my friends, Spencer, because we were both young and pretty slow. So I don't know whether they ended up paying more than they would have done for a normal person, but we basically split up the job, and then as we got faster, like one of us just stayed in and did it. But I remember on Friday nights it would be lamb, because I always remember the mint sauce, because mint sauce got everywhere into the sink, all over the plate. So you're bringing plates out the dishwasher and they're still covered in mint sauce. Stuff like that, you just remember like little things. And then usually in traditional hotels like ours, it would be like a rolling menu. So every Friday would be the same, but the guests obviously change, so they don't really know that. But Steve, who was one of the chefs we had back then, would make an amazing sticky toffee pudding, and we would always have that after our shift. So like, look, there's so many little things, and food and senses come into hospitality massively. So that's something that I'm really working towards hitting in Capes as well.
Yeah, like that. Where do you graduate? Where do you go from there?
Again, usually traditionally you would either maybe move, if you want to stay in the kitchen, don't like talking to people, you would probably move into like a commis chef role where you kind of prep veg, maybe plate up some dishes, help with the actual service of the food. So
where did you go?
I did a bit of both, but firstly went into the restaurant. It's a very traditional style of service back then. It was, people would have prawn cocktails, melon. People would have often a starter that'd have a juice. It's like very, very far removed from what we consider as British cuisine now. But it was exceptionally popular, and it's what people wanted. So the service was absolutely rapid, because you had a very limited menu, but people knew what they wanted, and you could just fire out the food nice and quickly. Serving tables, great fun. Met some really good people front of house as well, and obviously then you're interacting with the great British public, which is the main interesting point of the industry, really.
Any good stories that you could...
Too many. Could probably write a book, but I mean, people just you encounter people from every kind of background, especially when we then started kind of working with the pub kind of group of customers. Like the hotel trade is, like I say, people are more often than not, they're well behaved. Like they're here to have a nice time. They're relaxed. Like the complaints are inevitable, but they come around things that are relatively easy to solve. When you then put booze into the mix and get into a pub environment, people are a little bit more rowdy, and you do then have more things. But badly behaved people, rude people, just even last night we had someone come in and try and take some bottles of whiskey from behind the bar and sat down on the floor, and like it's just when you're open to the public, like you're always at risk of kind of, not at risk, but you're always going to encounter characters, and some people just try their luck. It's just a classic thing of dealing with that. trying to think of individual things, but I mean, just like one of those nights that I was with Spence having that pudding that I spoke about, we were sat in the kitchen behind the Kingswood, and we just had an automated barrier put in. So a car park barrier that goes up and down. When the customer turns up, they can put the code in and it opens up. And we were just sat there enjoying our pudding, and just had an absolutely massive clatter, and went out, and a guy had nicked someone's bike from the Marlborough, which was the previous name of Duke's, cycled full speed down the lane, and then just went over the handlebars straight through the barrier, bent the barrier to a complete
straight in
right
No.
angle. And then, like, as you have CCTV put in, you see stuff like that all the time. Yeah. People just doing like stuff that you think that is just completely mad, and not even just under the effects of alcohol, just general day-to-day stuff. So yeah, maybe let me have a think about the other stories and I'll come back to it.
It's such a high turnover of different people, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really? And that's what I'm guessing one of the great things about hospitality and that kind of position is you meet so many new people.
100%.
Every day is
so many
completely
staff,
different, isn't it?
So many customers, like, and also your staff are kind of like, especially as things change and like roles evolve and people evolve and expectations change within like customers and staff. There's a bit of a, you know, the cliche saying of like, you've got two sets of customers, your staff and the actual general public. Because if you don't look after one, then you're never going to be able to service the people that are paying you. So yeah, that's hugely important as well. Yeah.
So we've gone through your first position,
yeah.
You know, how you entered the industry. What was like your first, should we say, full-time position here?
I went away and worked in London for a little bit, and also in Hertfordshire. So I did a bit of work for two bigger chains. So for Champneys, which is like a large resort that does mainly health stuff, but they've also got hotels. And then I worked for the Soho House Group in London as well, which is a private members club. So I worked up there for a bit and then came back. And I guess that time when I came back was when I kind of took a position at the hotel here, when we had just knocked the two hotels together. So the restaurant kind of went from 50 covers, which is seating 50 people, to more like 80. And the kind of dynamic of that changed. It was a lot more management of tables rather than, because previously we had like enough tables for all the guests staying, and they had the same table throughout the whole stay, which is just like very, very old school.
Yeah.
And then we went from having that to having a restaurant where you could seat 80, but we only had 60 seats, for example. So it became more of a restaurant management like requirement, and that's kind of where I slotted in, looked at the systems, looked at how we would accommodate that, and like rejigging the kitchen. So that was kind of my first role, I guess, was restaurant manager.
And you actually say you went away to London.
Yeah.
How was sort of hospitality different up in London in the big smoke than it was down here in sunny Sidmouth?
Yeah, it was not as much at the health resort, because that was a bit different because it wasn't quite as full on. But in central London, it's quite a lonely industry. Like, I found that, especially because of majority of my friends that I was living with and also hanging out with, like, worked 9 to 5. So they would be going to the pub on a Sunday to settle in and start having a Sunday roast, and I would be going across to start serving one to people for 4.5, 5 hours, 6 hours, whatever it may be. So I learned a huge amount, and it was great to work for a bigger company. But in terms of like the day to day, it wasn't really that enjoyable, because I think probably because I was coming into it, I was in like a junior manager position there as well. So I didn't really I didn't bond with my colleagues, but I got on with all of them really well. But a lot of people kind of build a friendship group out of that and then socialise outside of work as well. But I did that when I was back here at a younger age, but that didn't click when I was up there. So I kind of found myself thinking, well, I'm literally going to work and when everyone else is having a nice time, and I'm then having days off when everyone else is at work. So I was basically just sleeping and really struggling with that like lifestyle. And I don't really mind admitting that, because I learned enough in the time that I was there to then come back and literally implement those things into what I was doing back here.
What did you learn? What did you bring back and implement?
I don't know, just an extra level of kind of awareness of people, like dealing with a lot of people up there. There were higher demanding customers in particular, and offering, I don't know, more kind of personal service, like just another level of service, and just a busier environment as well, because it was exceptionally busy. I think dealing with people turning tables, which actually then played well down to here, looking at a restaurant and managing that table's nearly finished, or they're taking a bit longer than normal, they're still waiting for coffee. Like, as a restaurant manager, you have to be able to see all those things, and I definitely think that was probably the biggest learning. Yeah.
So did you go up to London to kind of get those experiences? Was that the reason, or how come you...
I think really it was probably just to get up there and live out there and give it a go, really.
Yeah.
I am, having grown up literally 100 meters from the beach, I think it was always going to be a bit of a struggle, because I literally have loved being by the beach, being by the sea, being in the sea, and then to go and live in London, combined with that other factor, it was just like an environment that I didn't really enjoy that much. But yeah, it was to get that experience, was to go and work out there. So,
but it's so great to be able to bring everything back down from London, because that's sort of, the capital city. You think that's where all the bigger hotels are. That's where all like the big posh expensive hotels are. And if you can do it up there, then you'd like to think you'd be able to do 100%. It down here.
Yeah, and if you go to find anyone that's going for a career in it, like, they'll start there and maybe then find themselves in another resort or hotel in the southwest or wherever it may be. But most people do start there. So it was I don't regret it at all, and definitely learned a lot from it.
Definitely. So you came back and then came into sort of a management position here, like you said, tables. How long were you in that position, and where did it go from there?
Going back a few years now, I'm probably showing my age. I think then after a few years of doing that, I went over to Duke's and did a bit of floor management and stuff there. So similar kind of thing. That's kind of evolved over the 20 years of us having it to kind of be more of like very much food led now. So like the pub and drinking kind of scene in Sidmouth, but also in general, I think is on a bit of a decline because of the cost of the product. It's never really been like a proper boozer. Food has always been the main product, but that's like literally all they do now, really. So it was
how's that changed? Sorry to interrupt you there.
That's right.
How's that changed from 20 years ago? What was the sort of the culture of hotels and
I think we had when my parents relaunched it, it was a combination of kind of like sofas and relax areas and more of like a cafe bar pub element. And over time those kind of comfy areas got taken away because people would sit and drink coffee all day, and we focused on the food, put tables in, and you still then had bar service and drinking, and people would come in because pints were affordable in comparison to now, and have 3 or 4 pints, or they'd have a bottle of wine and some food. And it kind of evolved from that to then getting to COVID, where we went to full table service everywhere because of the restrictions, and it was kind of like a light bulb moment, or whatever you want to call it. Like, it was like, actually we can serve a lot more food, we can give better customer experience, they can be served by someone, they don't have to get a table outside that's covered in glasses and wasps and sticky stuff and then come into the bar and queue up, and we could manage the flow of service a lot better. And that's kind of how we ended up with where we are now. And then you combine the fact that pints are exceptionally expensive, drinks have gone up, people are looking at what they're spending, and it's kind of come full circle. So that's where it is now, and I think really that's the only way it will continue to go.
From a staffing point of view, I think we all understand the hospitality industry to be fairly difficult at the moment to recruit into and bring people in. What challenges have you faced, and what are you doing to overcome those challenges?
It is one of those industries that is notorious for high turnover, and also, a lot of unhappiness in work and challenges with regards to high stress. And, we've all seen Boiling Point and chefs screaming at people and all of that kind of stuff. We're quite fortunate because it's family owned. We've got people on the floor that are kind of the top level. We're talking 2 level people up from the ground level. So, but there's always someone nearby that you can talk to that is like a serious person within the company. So you're never really that far away from having a discussion with someone that can make a change. And also we've had people that have stayed for, decades at a time. So we're obviously doing something right within the culture. I'm not saying that we're perfect in any shape or form, because it is a stressful environment. There is always going to be someone who's struggling with something with regards to, am I being paid enough, or am I working too many hours, or am I being supported in the right way? We've always been really open with it, and with having people like Joe and myself and like now my brother who's back in the business on the floor, there's always someone to talk to. I think the wider industry has a real problem with it. I think still it is getting better because now we're at least talking about it, but people suffering in silence within the industry is pretty common and being treated pretty badly. So I would like to think that we have a great culture, and the repeat staff that come back year after year have been fantastic. And Brexit was pretty awful with regards to bringing people in from overseas, but we have now got a license to recruit from outside the EU. So the kind of the irony of the Brexit vote is that we've now got people that are coming in from further afield, but we've needed them to recruit and build a team, and they've been brilliant. So
what would you say you do differently in terms of culture?
I would say being actually the people that are kind of the decision makers, of being on the floor and understanding what's happening as best as we can without kind of following everyone around and being like, oh, what's happening here? Having an open door policy with regards to talking about things. We do provide like support with regards to pointing people in the right direction if they have questions about like their benefits and what they're owed and what they're allowed to do. Like, we're completely open with like, you need to call these guys if this has happened, and like educate the staff as well as what they're entitled to. No kind of stuff in the dark, and just trying to be a fun place to work. Like, you know, creating an environment where people want to kind of be here. So that's challenging, to be fair, but hopefully we're doing a right job of it.
How did COVID affect your businesses?
It was absolute chaos, to be honest. In a good way, like, we were fully occupied pretty much the whole time when there was no lockdown on, because people had nowhere else to go. So I'll go through the positives first. Lots of people that would never have come to Sidmouth or the Southwest, because they would always go to European holiday resorts, probably came along and found it. Whether they come back or not, I don't know. But say 100 of those people do, then you've got some new people that will come back to the town. That was good. In terms of like the, I guess, revenue from a basic business point, we had full bedrooms every night, but then you factor in...
During COVID?
Yeah, well, the periods where people were allowed to travel. Okay. Like, so there was the 2 summers where restrictions were lifted, right, and it kind of went a bit bonkers. So in that sense, like, it was great. But you then added in all of the elements of less travelling staff. The workforce got kind of cut down. Some people could work, some people couldn't. We had to recruit locally from a talent pool that was, you know, very small anyway because of the demographic of the town, plus recruiting people that weren't experienced in the industry. We had a meeting, I remember, the week before the restrictions got lifted on the forecourt of Duke's. Everyone's outside distance with pretty much a whole new team before going into what was the busiest summer ever. And then they put Eat Out to Help Out in.
Oh my God, I remember
that. And
it
was just chaos.
Distancing.
It was absolute chaos.
Yeah.
Rules changing all the time. Yeah. So again, we learned a lot, but it was very hard work.
What was your biggest lesson from that?
In a roundabout way, the lesson was that the best format for there was what we now have in place in terms of a business. You know, we may have some diehard customers that are like, I don't like going in. I hate going in and being told to sit here or wait to be seated because I want to go to the bar. But at the end of the day, that's not how it works now for us. We operationally, that's the best thing we learned from it.
And why is that?
Because it means that we can control the flow of right, tables. So
I'm guessing you make more money in food, is that
yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So previously people would literally come into the forecourt on a busy summer's day, and they'd find a table, and say 3 tables came up for free at once. All 3 of those people sit down at once. They all go to the bar at once. The kitchen have got no option as to whether that order comes through then, or so there could be 3 tables of 6 that come in order at exactly the same time. Okay. And all of a sudden you've got all of that food to cook. Whereas if you book table slots and you serve tables at a certain time, the guys at the front can basically decide when the food goes through and measure it and make sure that it goes out in a normal amount of time.
So I'm guessing then, like, just in my lifetime of hospitality or drinking or whatever, it has very much shifted from a real quite heavy like drinking culture to like most places it's almost just food now. And that's definitely happened in Sidmouth, hasn't it?
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And was, would you say, accelerated over COVID?
I think so, yeah, because realistically, if you're down here on holiday and like COVID's happening, everyone was like on turbocharge at that time. Like, people were just, you know, they wanted to do everything because they've been cooped up for so long.
I do remember that.
Yeah, it was just very stressful.
Sidmouth was so busy, wasn't
it?
And
the weather was incredible
exactly.
as well,
so
wasn't it?
you combine those 2 things, and like, so because of that, people aren't going to come in and sit and have a session in the afternoon. Like, people were coming in and eating and then like going
off. Yeah.
So I think that on the whole, though, like, you would probably find that if you looked at data across the whole country, that food is where it's moving to. Just because of the same reasons that we've said about, like, there's better margins and
drinking is becoming so expensive now as well, isn't it? With all the tax hikes and all
that
sort of
so
thing.
you factor in, and then you also factor in that supermarkets can sell it, whether it's a loss or a very small margin to get people through the door, and you're pretty much up against it there with regards to that. Like, understandably, you have to have a venue that offers all of the things that you don't get at home in order to get people to come in and buy pints. But that's also exceptionally challenging for publicans, because if you then put BT Sport or TNT Sport, whatever it's called, in, and then Sky in, and then before you know it, your margin on your pint, which is already costing you X amount to buy, without the VAT and staffing, is being eaten away at, or drunk away at, if you want to call it that, say that. Yeah. So it is really tricky to be a booze only or drink only venue. Yeah.
And you don't, I'm talking about Duke's here.
Yeah.
It's still independently owned, isn't
it?
It's
not so free of tie,
or anything like that, which is, in comparison to what you can do, such a huge difference.
Yeah.
Between
Absolutely. And if you are owned by a brewery, they can dictate what you buy. They can set the rate that you buy it for. They can even often set your menu, so they dictate how much you charge for it as well. So we are exceptionally fortunate in that sense that we're freehold, but it's still challenging enough to make those margins on those pints, and glasses of wine. When you're going in a glass of wine to get the margin you used to get 8-10 years ago, you're having to charge £8-9-10 a glass for a large glass of wine. Realistically, people are going to go and buy a bottle of nice Sauvignon from the supermarket, aren't they? Because it's on offer, or they can get it with the club card.
It's that much cheaper,
exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose it was that much more affordable 15-20 years ago to go out and actually pay a couple quid for a pint.
Whereas you still get that value for people. People don't necessarily have a commercial fryer at home, so they will still come out and buy fish and chips or little things like that. So that's where you put your focus. Yeah,
definitely. Okay. Where did you go next after that?
I'm trying to think.
So
you've done a few things.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. So I went and worked for Bacardi, who in a
still close to the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was probably in 2013, 2014. So I'd carried on working across the sites before that, and then wanted a break from the businesses. So I went and worked in I guess it's like a account management role. They probably got I think it was like some silly account executive name, but long story short, it is account management. So going to places like Duke's and to other places around. I actually covered kind of down to Torbay and up to Taunton kind of area. So people that were already on their records, already on their software, and also going to pitch to new businesses as well to get them to stock their kind of range of products. So Bacardi own loads of products, Grey Goose, Martini, all under the same umbrella. So that was kind of, like you say, still in the same industry and kind of experiencing reps coming in and stuff into Duke's and coming to pitchy stuff. That kind of taught me quite a lot of lessons of how to approach it, because for some reason you'd be literally rammed 7 people lunch and it would be chaos, and then you just see someone hovering by the door with like a backpack and like a fleece on that says Coke or whatever it may be, and it's like, really,
trying to sell you
coming
something
now?
Right now.
Yeah, and like I just thought, like, as soon as I got that role, I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like I'm going to approach it in a completely different way. Like I'm not a very salesy salesperson.
What did you do different?
I just picked the times that I knew that they would be like quieter, or kind of didn't just kind of walk up and be like, I'll go and buy a coffee. I probably spent more personal money on going in and buying coffees and being a customer first, and then being a person to speak to them about something. But in my kind of experience, that worked because they didn't just see you as coming in someone trying to force something on someone, and also just like literally letting them do the talking and tell them what they actually need and are missing. And if there's nothing there, not trying to be like, oh, did you realize we have this? Because realistically, if they don't need it, you shouldn't really try and sell it to them, in my opinion. That's probably why I didn't hit the numbers that I needed or whatever, but I didn't want to be that kind of like...
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a different job, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
sorry.
No, carry on.
I was just going to say, how did you find that different job? Because that is really different to managing people.
Yeah, 100%.
And then
kind of... I did really enjoy it, to be fair. And again, it was like quite good to work for a bigger company. Just seeing... I mean, it's frustrating in some ways because like I hate to use this kind of... the classic statement that people use when they say, a cruise liner versus a speedboat, and you can make decisions and all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of like what we are here, even though it's a relatively like big business with 90 staff in the summer. We're still independent, so we can still say tomorrow we want to change that on the menu. But bigger companies just can't do that. So there was quite a lot of hurdles to go through. Like if you had some stock that you could give away, you had to get it approved, and it wasn't kind of like as free. I guess to go back to Anning's, which is a fruit cider company that I started, which we can probably touch on in a minute as well. I also kind of used that approach to going in and speaking kind of as someone who's from the industry as a kind of level ground for when speaking to people about pitching that product, which is something that I did a long time ago. That was 2012 that I founded that. So
what skills did you learn just from your your account role? Because really similar industry, and you were almost on the other side of the fence there with that, weren't you, rather than offering it. What did you bring anything back and implement?
Probably time management. I'm not the most organised person, so you had to be really organised and get like your 7 to 8 calls in a day. Not physical phone calls, not phone calls, actual physical drops into people. So they had an iPad with their accounts on, and you had the history of the visits and what they've stopped before, and you have to do formulas of like going through, like ticking off what they've had, what's on display on the back bar, making sure they're showing things properly. So I guess a bit of that kind of organisational thing for me, and actually then like looking at how our bars were presented, what we had on stock, what was selling well, how it was positioned on the bar, what things were listed on the cocktail menu. All of that kind of stuff came from that as well, because they basically aim to give you KPIs to get the customer selling more drink, but also for the brands to be presented well in venue. Not just a case of, okay, they're stocking that, it gets put on the back bar, and the main thing that's still on display is a competitor brand. So it was kind of like positioning within venue, I guess, would be another thing.
That's an interesting one. And let's move on to Annings then.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit what happened there and what it was?
So Annings is and was the fruit cider company that I founded in 2012. I was still working at Duke's while I did that, and having a full-time job and trying to start something is pretty challenging. And it was, I can't even work out how old I was, but very early 20s.
10 years ago.
Yeah, so it was a bit of an adventure, and I founded it with a guy called Jim Mardell, who is just, he was, I guess, in a roundabout way, he was my business mentor with it, because we kind of went into it 50-50, but it all came about because Jim, who owns a company called Tolchards, who are a drinks wholesaler, he's a bit of an industry legend in the drinks industry, so he came in to pitch to the hotels to speak to us about supplying us, because he was at a large company that kind of folded and started up Tolchards at a very tricky time, and then came in for a meeting because he was supplying us at that stage, and I knew him from previous stuff, and we were just having a chat about like what drinks trends were happening, and we were talking about fruit cider, and he was actually going to Lime Bay Winery, which is the people that we had Annings made with originally, for a meeting, and said, well, why don't you come along and talk to them about it as well? And I did. We went and spoke about fruit cider, and they were looking to produce it, but didn't really know how to market it, because they make traditional fruit wines and mead, and now make amazing English grown wine. But at that stage, they weren't doing that. And we kind of said, well, should we try and make one? And that was kind of how it came about. So Jim had the lorries and the logistics and years of drinks experience. But I guess that I kind of took over the kind of, looking at it now, there's lots more buzzwords around what you would say I was doing. But even 10 years ago, there wasn't any of that really. It was kind of, it's so strange looking back, it's so close in my mind, but in terms of setting up a business, it seems like like the Stone Age, because
why?
Because now, like, you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got LinkedIn, you've got podcasts, you've got so many resources around that you can learn from as a founder, where you can go and say, oh wow, they're doing that, that's quite a cool brand. Pinterest, you can go and look at branding. Like back then I was just like, oh, what could a fruit cider look like? It's like, look at the trade magazine to see what Brothers are doing or what other Copperberg are doing, and kind of work out where we sat in line with that. So the name is named after, or the brand is named after Mary Anning, who's a paleontologist from Lyme Regis, very famous lady. She's got a statue down there now. She's pretty much like the forefather or mother, as you want to call it, because she was literally in an industry where it was all male, of fossil hunting. And I named it after her because it's located in the southwest and near us and on the Jurassic Coast, but it's not too obvious. It's something that could be bought up country somewhere and not be like Devon cider, so I thought that was quite important. So it ties in, and it's not my name, which people can't pronounce, and it's not something that's too obvious. So I kind of developed the brand with my cousin's husband to do the graphic design, and we actually launched it in Duke's at the start of Folk Week, so that was quite a good springboard. And then Jim started distributing it within Tolchards network, and 10 years later they've got about 3 more flavours, and it's stocked all over their network. They've actually continued growing at Tolchards, so Jim's acquired multiple other distributors and warehouses around the country, so it's all over the place.
Are you still part of Annings?
No, I want to say, again, this is a word now that means a lot more on LinkedIn than it did then, but I guess I exited, if you can call it that, in 2015. So it's not glamorous in terms of like you hear big exits, but you know, I treat that as my kind of university degree. I didn't go to uni, and I kind of see Annings as those 3 years, whatever it was, I treat them as my like uni, because by the end of it I was burnt out, but I learned like so much.
What were the biggest lessons from Annings?
I think really just like potentially going to see people, like having rejection from customers and people. And again, I tried to get it up in London, because at that stage Tolchard started distributing into London, and it's like you're going into bars where they're getting thousands of pounds a year from Copperberg or from Old Moot or from these guys that are giving them whatever they want. And the fact that it's a great product and a good story, and I'm the founder in front of you, only goes so far with the bartender who's probably mates with the rep from Old Moot or Heineken or whatever it is. So that was massively challenging, and it's kind of like, actually, okay, it's going well in the southwest where people can see that it's Annings and see that it's made in Lyme Bay, and might have heard of it because they've had it in Cornwall or somewhere else. But then as soon as you get into the big city, it's like, who are you, mate? Like, and probably a lot of the challenges that small craft brewers have, especially now when the market's so saturated, is that craft brands have now got a lot more power to spend money. So getting in the door of bigger suppliers was hard, and rejection was probably one of the bigger things.
Was that why you exited? Because you were burnt out?
Yeah, I think so. We got to a stage where, again, this is very different even in 2015 to now. The next stage was kind of expansion. So it would have been either having investment to buy stock at a level where the price point came down and we could then approach supermarkets or other wholesalers. So at the price point that we're at, it worked at Tolchards because it was all internal and selling to their customers. If you then went to another wholesaler, like, they're going to want to pay less, they're bigger, more aggressive with their pricing, and at that point our price point wasn't right. In order to get the price point down, we would have had to order, you know, tens of thousands of bottles, and in order to do that you need to pay up front for that stock. So there was the investment on that level, and then also extra investment needed if you were going to compete with the big guys for point of sale materials, bar runners, glassware, all of the stuff that if you then approach a big pub group, they're going to want. And at that stage I was like, I'm like mid-20s, I don't really know how to do that. And Jim was expanding his bread and butter business, which was the wholesale. So for him it worked well having their own brand internally that people really liked. But for me, I was like, well, I don't know how to do the next stage. And I kind of looked at it, like I've said, about like it being my learning experience and being like, I'm at peace with kind of learning what I have and knowing that the brand's in a good place with Tolchards. And now seeing it around still is amazing. It's such a great feeling. People still send me pictures if they're in, you know, a random place. It's like, oh, here's an Annings. It's like great. And I can go to a bar nearby here and order it, and it's like, it's cool. But I think really realistically now, if I was in that stage and it was like looking at investment, like how many years down the line, it would be like, right, here we go. Like, I know who to approach.
Is that because of your age and what you know now?
Yeah, and then also working in like the drinks industry, so working in Bacardi, there'd be people there that I could tap up and say, okay, you're supplying that company, who's the person to go to there? Or even jumping on LinkedIn and being like, okay, they've started that, I could drop them a message. So I think like looking to raise that funding and looking how to, it's two different things. It's like the experience of being able to then take that funding and work with it, and also knowing how to go and get that and speak to people and having the confidence to talk about it. So
do you feel like it has become a lot easier to get funding and run a business now than it has 10 years ago?
In terms of finding people, the product's still got to be great, obviously, and the business is still got to be good, and it's got to be a sound investment. But I think in terms of finding people and seeing what's out there, and like, you know, then you factor in stuff like Seeders and crowdfunding, like there are way more avenues to get that money. I still think the main challenge is having a good business that adds up, obviously, and a good brand. But I would say that like the avenues to explore it are definitely way more open. Yeah.
Do you ever think like, what if?
Yeah, I do all the time. But I think more that I'm at peace with it than actually, the thing I think more is that I should have started a gin company in 2012, because there's still people launching gin companies that are doing well now. And gin then was literally like Sipsmiths and a few other guys that went on to get acquired by very big people for lots of money. And I think actually gin probably would have been the one. But fruit cider was still in massive growth at that stage, so it still felt like a good option. But yeah, that's my bigger regret, is actually not seeing that gin was going to be bigger. But seeing it now, I'm exceptionally proud of it. Like, it's in really good hands with Sean and Jim. Jim's son Sean works in the business. He's a friend of mine, and they've moved it to another local company, Sanford Orchards, who are producing it, and Barney's an absolute legend there, so they're making it a really, really good product, and I'm sure it will continue to grow because they're putting it into cans. So watch out at supermarkets soon. I'm sure it might be there. Then I will regret it if it is in supermarkets.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What is the future of booze/alcohol?
I think basically it's a bit like I don't think it's as severe as smoking, but I think that there's been a generation that's grown up with it being kind of commonplace. We're probably, well, not you, Maddi, because you're very young, but I think that we've kind of experienced that, and that pub culture, and like what that felt like to go to a pub and be part of that, and like bigger than just the drink. I think that because that's kind of phasing out, I think that the generations coming through won't necessarily experience that, and I don't know whether drink away from that is going to be as much of an appeal to people. Then you factor in all the stuff with regards to healthy lifestyles, being outside. The negative side of things, which is obviously awful, is that drugs are more affordable. So generations coming through are ditching going to the pub or buying booze because they can get drugs for cheaper, which is just mental and
it's horrible to think that, isn't
awful. It? Yeah. In terms of the industry, I think it's not too big to fail, but like, you know, I think that it's going to keep evolving, and I can't see how, at the cost it up to the NHS and to personal health and to physical mental health, that they're not going to regulate the marketing of it. When you think that booze is still marketed in the same way that cigarettes used to be, with regards to the amazing branding and advertising and all of that kind of stuff, I can't help but think that they're going to start maybe changing that, because it's still glamorous, isn't it? It's still glamorous to drink.
I agree, but I can't help think that it's too much of a big industry to lose all that money on.
Yeah.
To take it away.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't know the stats about like the cost to NHS of drink, but it can't be that different to smoking in terms of the cost of it to people, to the actual government and to the people. But yeah, it generates loads of tax money, and massive companies like, you know, some of the biggest companies in the world are the drinks companies. But I don't know. I personally have had a bit of a journey with drink. I don't drink as much as I used to. I do really enjoy some of the non-alcoholic drink brands, Pentire from Cornwall, and like some of the other guys are making great stuff, and the non-alcoholic beer brands are getting better, but there'll always be a place for it. I think you can't, you know, there's always going to be weddings, there's always going to be celebrations, but as a bigger industry, it just depends how far it gets scrutinized and whether people kind of grow out of it. You know, they're campaigning now to have a smoke-free generation coming through, people that are coming up through that are 15, 16 now never smoke. I mean, will that ever happen with booze? I don't know. But I think for us, we've embraced food, and realistically, it could go either way. But it's a pretty big beast at the moment. So, yeah.
Do you think that maybe there could be a product like coffee that could overtake it, like that coffee culture rather than drinking culture?
I think like low and no at the moment, in terms of like lower ABV drinks or completely alcohol free. It's that balance of like why do people drink? Is it for the buzz of getting drunk, or is it for the taste of the product? Like, I think it's a combination of the two, unfortunately. Like, that's why these low and no product brands may not like hit straight through. If they work on some of them, which some of the brands are, of adding in nootropics and other ingredients that simulate that feeling of being giddy and being a little bit drunk, that would probably be the place that it hits. Like, whether that's CBD or mushrooms or the legalization of that's where it might come, I think. But in terms of like,
you're just replacing a like for a like.
Exactly, yeah. But I don't know, it depends how they regulate it and how they make it, but
there's such a big swing towards like sobriety now, isn't there?
100%. Yeah,
I think my personal opinion is I'm not sure if alcohol will ever go away, but the mindset is completely swung.
Absolutely.
And there is really like it's such a time and a place now,
always,
isn't there, for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than you've got to go out, you've got to drink, you've got to get really drunk. If you don't enjoy it, don't have it.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was, you know, you go out, you have a drink, you will enjoy it, you'll get used to it, sort of thing. You know, it'll be fine.
It's definitely changed. Yeah. So we'll see.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you started another business as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Fairly recently, I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course.
Vince?
So in lockdown, whilst working at Duke's as well, I worked with a friend of mine, Polly, and another close friend, Giles, and we kind of were like, actually Giles and I kind of looked at stuff together all the time, what was happening, you know, what people are buying, trends within business, all the boring kind of nausy stuff that if you enjoy like branding and marketing and products that you kind of keep an eye on. And we decided to set up a vitamin D gummy company. Basically at that stage, like D2C was huge because everyone was at home. Vitamin D was like the suggested supplement for COVID as well. So it felt like a really kind of obvious choice and kind of a safe bet. But we sourced a really great product. Polly came up with an amazing brand. You know, I'm not just saying that myself. Like the feedback was really good.
Yeah.
Not just from friends, but in general, like the customers that we had really, really liked it. But I think we were doing it alongside 3 very full-time jobs, which are all massively affected by COVID. So Polly had an online shop, Giles was involved with Mindful Chef, and then I was at Duke's, which was, you know, so not only are we kind of trying to sort up and set up a new company, we had 3 industries that we worked in that were under huge pressure. So then you factor in the fact that actually we were doing that, but also trying to create something that a lot of other people were probably doing at the same time. So although on paper it's like, okay, massive growth sector, people are going to be taking vitamin D, gummies are the future of that, there was also a lot of people that would be doing the same thing. So a lot of people did sprout up at the same time. And also we didn't really have we had the skill set for creating the brand, sourcing the products, looking at making it look, taste, sound, all great. We're all very like creative in that sense, but we didn't because we were so excited about it and getting it out there. I don't think we kind of we didn't strategize well enough for the launch, do enough research into the market, see who else was coming up. We looked at who the competitors were, we looked at what they were doing, and we had our points of difference and we had our benefits. But I don't think we looked at like, okay, well, what does that actually mean for moving forward? Like, what are the numbers? Because none of us are really numbers people. We got so carried away with like all the nice fonts and the colors and that we kind of probably neglected that a little bit. That'll be my biggest learning from it. But I do think that really like the fact that we're all so similar didn't help that. So like in terms of like founding stuff moving forward, I know I've kind of founded Capes on my own, but I'm looking now for someone that could be my numbers person because of that, the thing that I've learned from Mins. Whether I find them or not, or whether it comes as a second stage kind of thing, that's what I really need. Yeah. I think the product itself was great, but that like I said about the kind of the funding thing, having a great product and having a great brand is only one very small element of like the wider business, isn't it? Like,
it's a great point. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had it was Middens, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it was called, your vitamin D supplement. And like you said, I think, you know, loads of things lined up for it, didn't it? The timing was spot on for it. Yeah. The branding was spot on for it. Yeah, everybody was talking about COVID, vitamins. Yeah. People still talk about that now. You 100%. Know, like the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, probably longer, there's been such a health kick. And everybody's moving towards, maybe not moving towards, but understanding like the importance of good health. Yeah, 100%. Having the right sort of nutrients.
Absolutely, yeah.
But like you said, having the time and effort to put in a strategy to sell that sort of thing. You know, it's not enough just to have a good product, is it really? No.
You know, you forget the internet is just huge, you know, and then you've got Amazon brands, you've got big companies launching onto Amazon with like unlimited budget. And we, you know, and D2C is so much about ads as well. You know, like you forget that really an organic website out there could be like anywhere, it could be selling anything, it could be giving away gold for all that matters. But if you aren't putting it in front of people through targeted ads, people aren't going to find it. And that was kind of another thing as well. It's like, it's like, okay, great, we've got it out there, but we now have to kind of get it in front of people. It's like, how much can we afford to spend? Well, realistically, like we've got no margin for marketing. And that was another part of the strategy that just kind of like, we were like, oh yeah, that's a valid point. Like, how do we put it in front of the right people? Yeah. And at that stage, vitamin D was probably one of the most bid for terms across Google and Facebook because so many people were trying to get it out there to people.
I imagine it was pretty saturated at the time,
100%.
wasn't it, with that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Going back then, off those two businesses, what would you do differently?
I think with Annings, it would probably be getting... Jim was a fantastic mentor in terms of like the day-to-day running of it, but like looking at going into that stage of potentially the next level of change, maybe bringing someone else in to say, okay, these are your numbers, this is what you've done, and then we can push it forward and this is the direction you should go in, and looking at actually what that's going to cost and what that would be, regardless of whether you had the kind of ability to look at social media or for advice or podcast advice, like actually looking at the data and seeing what it would cost. So that's irrelevant of like the timescale of like the media that's around you to be able to get advice. Like, so I think numbers again would be the main thing that we would have looked at and should have looked at in terms of making those decisions. Obviously there's always a bit of a gut kind of intuition of what you want to do, and like I said, I kind of had reached my point of not wanting to do it for that time. But yeah, I guess really analysing it and making a decision based on that would have been good for Annings. In terms of Mins, I guess being realistic with like your time and what you can actually achieve, because I think part of it was like wanting a distraction from like the horrors is a strong word, but like the day-to-day kind of running of the business. It was almost like a break. So you'd go away and it'd be like, right, this is my thing, this is what I'm working on, this is my distraction. But realistically, like I think that you need to have it all kind of as much as you can worked out before you go live, and because D2C is exceptionally tricky. Like it's not something you can just, I mean, you can put stores live and people do, you know, there's occasional miracles where people put something live and it's like, wow, it goes huge, but it's such a structured and specialist market that I think really we went into it a bit naively without that strategy, and it backfired. So I think that would be, you almost work that out before you start your product and brand, because like you have to know where it's going to fit in the market and then make it look nice and taste nice after that.
Yeah, I'm kind of taking from that your lessons have been to maybe have a bit more of a future focused mindset 100%. when you think of these ideas and these goals, that you need to have a bit more of a goal driven idea about it all.
What advice would you give to somebody who's at that stage where they are struggling to progress their business to kick on?
I think it maybe depends on the industry and like the individual as well, because I don't know, it can be so daunting to take that like next step because you have to often spend money to kind of make that step forward. So it's not like you've made a gamble, maybe left another job to start the business in the first place and it's going relatively well. But you have to weigh up, okay, this next step could take us to here, but in the meantime there's going to be a bit of hurt, whether it's financial or extra stress so I think again it's like having the support network around you, making sure that you're managing like your expectations and knowing what that's going to be like, because there will be surprises as well. So I think it's just going into it with an open mind, knowing that things can be planned out but could go wrong at any stage. But as long as you've got that kind of structure and that support network around you, making sure that you're kind of planning for as you step and going on gut as well. So you can have as much planning as you want, but if you do listen to your gut, often it's the way to go. So that's probably a bit of a muddled answer, but like I think really it's kind of making sure that you've got a clear idea in your head, like you said, Maddi, about what that's going to kind of be on paper. So at least you can work towards that. And then, having some options for if things go wrong here and there. But positive mindset and following your intuition with a bit of planning chucked in.
That's good. What was your next role after that?
Where were we again?
So you finished Mins.
I then kind of focused more on the day-to-day marketing and kind of running of the hotels in terms of across the board, looking at rebranding. We rebranded, like very soft rebranding, not like completely restructuring, but we took away the name Devorin from the Kingswood and Devorin Hotel to make it just the Kingswood. So rebranded on that and celebrated the 70th anniversary of it being the Kingswood. Did the same for the Elizabeth, and then Duke's also had like a soft refit over a couple of years. So that all kind of meant that like in terms of like the look and feel of them, all at a level where we're happy that they were in line with kind of our competitors and, you know, on par with what other people are doing in the industry. So kind of not modernising it because they're all relatively modern, but like bringing it in line with what we want it to be. So yeah, it was doing that day to day, dealing with all the other kind of stuff that comes into that, because you could have a role that says X, Y, and Z, or I could be that at a hotel, but really you're always like 10 meters away from the kitchen sink, if you know what I mean. Like you could always end up KPing again, and you do often end up in that situation. If there's someone short, someone's called in sick, you are back to waitering, you're back to dealing with a complaint. Like you're never really sat at a desk in this industry. So yeah, that's what the last few years has been.
How do you market hotels?
Well, I mean, my grandma, who sadly got Alzheimer's, or she constantly likes to remind me that one of her favourite stories is that people used to turn up to check in, and as they were checking in, they're booked for the same week next year. So that was their marketing, really. They offered such a great product and had such a fantastic customer base that people would repeat book on the spot as they arrived, because that was their holiday every year. She likes telling me that story, and I often tell her it's not quite like that anymore.
Yeah, so that's what you do, is it? You manage that?
It's not. It's kind of split across a mixture of things. So social media and stuff is great for kind of keeping the brand ticking over and keeping it in front of the right audience. In terms of like organic posts, I don't really feel that that's kind of something that people engage in that much anymore. I think we need to get better at working on paid ads for getting people to sign up for mailing lists, and mailing lists are pretty big. People sign up for the Wi-Fi internally and then get added to a mailing list if they opt in. So you've got people that have been here that you can then email out to. So we do a lot of that. And basically, trying to get people to come and pre-book and rebook, because we do get a lot of repeat custom.
How have booking engines, the booking.coms, disrupted the industry?
Oh, massively. Like probably more than anything else in its history, because it's kind of taken away the hotel's like control of the situation, really. Like, even from kind of my grandparents' stage and my parents' stage, like they still kind of had control of their customer base, and if people rang up and booked with them, you get the deposit, that all of that money's coming to you. And now, like, whether you like it or not, if you're not on booking.com or any of the other sites, you're not existing, really, because their ranking power on SEO and Google is like, you can't compete with it. There are millions of pounds worth of budget to get them to the top of those listings everywhere. So even if you've got the best like SEO in the world on your normal website, you're not getting near them. So you have to embrace it. Necessary evil is the one way of describing it.
What percentage of your, I suppose, custom comes from those sites opposed to direct bookings?
So it kind of works as a bit of a three-tiered split. So the Kingswood is more of traditional clientele. So they still like calling up, still like speaking to the receptionist, still like speaking to reservations and saying, I'm coming back, can I have my room, can I have this, that's fine, which is great because it means you're not paying up to 18% per booking.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
that's how much it can be then.
Yeah. So
and you have to pay that on top of, so the customer will then pay the fare for the hotel room, but then because you've used the booking.com service and acquired a customer through that, you have to then pay potentially up to 18% for that service per room.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So that kind of slides in scale across the businesses. So you've got like less booking.com here, Elizabeth's in between the two because the clientele is between the two, and then Dukes, you have people that will be on the forecourt having lunch and they'll be like, I fancy staying here tonight, rather than getting up and coming into reception. They'll book, and it's like, no, that's X amount gone. But it relies heavily on it there, and that's just the nature of it. Like some people don't, some companies I know and smaller businesses have stopped marketing internally and just assign their marketing budget to the booking.com commission, basically, because why try and fight the devil when you can let it do its work for you? So it's a necessary evil, and I think Duke's probably, I would say 50-50, if not even more booking.com or booking engines. And the others like maybe a sliding scale back to maybe 20% here.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
And the other big disruptor, I suppose, in the hotelier industry is Airbnb.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah.
How did that start? Did you see a big disruption when it first came out, and how's that sort of progressed through time?
Probably not as much as like inner city hotels, where kind of that's kind of where it started. Like when they launched in New York and stuff, there was like rebelling, and people were like getting absolutely crazy with Airbnb. I think we noticed it more in COVID because every Tom, Dick and Harry was kind of putting their house on Airbnb to take advantage of the people wanting to come to the coast. So then you see like maybe actually we wouldn't have seen the reduction if it hadn't been for COVID, because obviously we were still full anyway, but noticing the number of listings that were then available after COVID stopped or the lockdown stopped, there were so many more places to stay in Sidmouth people monetizing their holiday homes and whatever it may be. So I think that on the whole, it has affected the industry massively. I think there's still something to be said for staying in a hotel versus a flat or someone's house, because people still do like checking in and, you know, the experience of being in a hotel, going to a bar, having the restaurant internally. But I think there's enough. I mean, there are still enough people to go around, and I think because we position ourselves as more traditional hotels with customer service and people on call, you know, we are still different. And we've also got some self-catering accommodation ourselves, which does come through Airbnb. So we haven't just kind of sat there and let it crack on. We've converted 3 premises that we have here.
We're actually in one.
Yeah, we're in one at the moment. Yeah, we're in the apartment within one of the hotels. So rather than resting on our laurels, it's kind of like you can't beat them, join them, get on there, and that's one of the bigger investments over the last few years is coming onto the self-catering scene.
Definitely. Yeah. So I mean, you can use it to your advantage, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
What you've done now, you know, you've almost got a bit of a split in terms of the services you offer, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And just going back to what you said, really valid point. It's such different experiences using an Airbnb
absolutely,
opposed to a hotel. And this, I suppose the older generation and maybe the people that have got the money to be able to go to a hotel and be looked after, you know, have your breakfast cooked for you, you know, get your sheets cleaned and changed every day is,
I think it's
very different to Airbnb.
Absolutely. I think the Airbnb thing to them is completely alien, really.
Yeah.
Why would I want to go and stay in someone else's house, for example? Like, okay, holiday cottages are a little bit different because I think people see them as like a traditional place that's set up purely for that. But I think that like bandwagon thing of people converting rooms or whatever, I just don't think a lot of the clientele and market that would come to the seaside would like and stay with us would want that. So
I feel very uncomfortable going to those sort of places as well. I'm personally not really an Airbnb person. But it is very different, isn't it? You're going into somebody else's house, you don't know what's in there.
I think sometimes it depends on the listing, doesn't it? Like if it's just the room or if it's the whole place. But still you're going in and there's like people's like family portraits and stuff. You're like, sometimes it's a bit weird, but we've definitely kind of embraced it. And I think that on the whole, like it probably hasn't affected us as much as some of the inner city hotels.
Have there been any other sort of big disruptors in your time within hospitality?
I guess like in terms of like the day-to-day headaches, like TripAdvisor was a massive thing like in the mid 2000s, like when that came about and people started voicing their opinions, warranted or not. It was a real headache for the industry, really, because the best way to resolve a complaint, in my opinion, is at the time. Like you can often like resolve situations more often than not through a conversation and finding out what went wrong and then fixing it at the time. If people then go away and choose to write a review, like at least you tried your best, and you can then go back to the review and say, look, we spoke about it at the time. If that doesn't get resolved at the time and they go away and they rant about it, like there's not much you can do about that. Like if it's really like defamatory, you can get it taken down. But that was a real pain for people, because it let people review, which is great and it's brilliant for sharing thoughts and recommendations, but it then also was quite toxic in some ways that people could like rig the system and competitors were going on and putting negative reviews up and fake reviews, and it became about the ranking. And there's the whole thing with Uber Butler, who did the Vice article where he set his garden shed up as a restaurant and got to #1 in London,
got the highest rated restaurant,
you know. So like I think a lot of people saw that and were like, oh actually it's a load of rubbish. But you do have that whole review thing that is now so much more open. You've got Facebook kind of communities and stuff where something can be said and all of a sudden it gets escalated, and it's a very, I would say social media and review sites in general have been a real kind of headache for a lot of people.
Is that because people can just jump on there, say whatever they want unaccounted for?
Absolutely, yeah. So if there's something that is really kind of, you know, not true and that is going to affect your business, you can apply to obviously have it taken down, or you can reply to it. But a lot of people have been really affected by it, and had real negative effects to their business. So there are a lot of positives. If you're doing really good stuff and you're getting really good reviews, fantastic. It's free marketing and like you're being ranked on TripAdvisor, great. So it's been brilliant for that, and it makes you strive to be better, and that's obviously really positive. But if there are reviews that are kind of, you know, are blatantly not true or something that's really bad, it does make it really hard. Like you get that kind of TripAdvisor anxiety, like, oh my God, what have they said? You get that notification come through and it's like, oh.
What's your kind of approach to those if you do get any negative comments? Because sometimes silence is golden, isn't it?
Yeah, but then I think addressing it really kind of Jo, our GM and director, who's been at the company for 20 years, she's fantastic with people and is just amazing. And more often than not, she'll get in touch with people because she's on the floor more often and around people that like have served them and has the discussions with people before going back. And she's great at speaking to people. And yeah, you are going to get them. Like, you're serving thousands of meals in the summer, like lots of bed nights throughout the year. Things are going to go wrong. That's just the nature of the industry. If it can be rectified at the time, that's the biggest thing. So if you're ever in a restaurant and something isn't right, speak up. We as Brits are terrible at not saying stuff, but you're better off to talk about it at that time rather than go away feeling aggrieved with what you've experienced, because no one really benefits from that. So yeah.
With TripAdvisor, it's such a new thing, wasn't it? I can imagine, because it was a new thing, everybody thought they had to jump on there and write a review, and hide behind a faceless picture on social media and an account. But now I think, do you use TripAdvisor? I certainly don't. I wouldn't look at TripAdvisor reviews.
No.
Not over Google.
Google reviews are the one.
Google
is where.
But also you can leave reviews on, actual websites for these sort of businesses as well, can't you? Which are, I just feel like a little bit more genuine. I think you've just got to take those sort of reviews for those sort of engines and sort of formats, just a little pinch of salt.
And that's why I think people have become more educated on it as well. Yeah. I think the vast majority of people would think, actually, that looks like an absolute like stinker, red herring, kind of like what's going on here. Yeah. So people are more educated with it and like to make their own mind up. So
I did read a stat as well, actually, that a really bad review isn't actually as effective, or doesn't have as big an impact as an average review, because people look into the average reviews more and think that bad reviews are just
probably
people,
someone going crazy.
People that's gone crazy, very inflammatory, like kicked up a fuss, that sort of thing. So if you've got a lot of average reviews, that's worse than a few.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
I must check.
Have a look at your average reviews.
Everything's coming in at 4.
Average coffee.
Yeah. God,
so we've spoken a lot about the hotels. Let's kick it on and then talk about Capes.
Sure.
You got your birthday next year, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Next weekend.
Sorry, not next year.
Next year will be 2. Hopefully,
we'll be
still
2
going.
Yeah. Still have a birthday.
Yeah.
Where did that idea come from? Where did Capes come from?
So the actual name is Triassic Lizard. That was discovered at Jacob's Ladder, which is the beach just along from here, in 2013 by a paleontologist called Rob. I hope that's his name. I'm pretty sure it is. So again, I took a bit of inspiration from what I did with Annings, like trying to find the name that's unique, that you can trademark, because trademarking is an absolute minefield, but also that was related to the area, but that could stand up wherever you were, because I think that's, as I said with Annings, is pretty important. So that kind of worked, and it's actually pronounced Carpes, but most people don't speak in Old Latin tongue.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Have you pushed that? Like,
no.
You want to, no. I was going to say, I've been saying it wrong.
And it's spelled Kapes.
Yeah. And the actual kind of remnants that he found is the best example of it in the world. So it's on display at Sidmouth Museum. I've not actually been yet, but I've heard it's really good.
Yes.
Wow.
But I am going to go up and have a look at it when it reopens. But yeah, it's on display there. And it's like a little lizard about yay size, and was a plant eater and literally roamed around where we're sitting 250 million years ago. So pre-dinosaurs. So yeah, this section of the coast is Triassic rather than Jurassic, even though we're on the Jurassic coast. Yeah. In terms of the actual business, not just the name, I just wanted to kind of create it's a bit cheesy, but going back to like the third place, which is the Howard Schultz's name for what Starbucks was in terms of that place between work and home. I wanted to create that on the seafront in Sidmouth, so somewhere that people could stop no matter what time of day it was, whether they're going to work, finishing a run, going for a surf. That's where you stop off to get a coffee or a drink or just have a chat.
And what do you do differently to other coffee shops, do you say?
I really think just try to focus on consistency, because that is, in my opinion, the biggest thing in hospitality. You can go somewhere and have the best coffee or steak or salad of your life, and then go back a couple of weeks later and it not be as good. And we are creatures of habit. It's why the biggest food companies in the world are McDonald's and KFC and Nando's, because if you go to Nando's or McDonald's, you know what you're going to get. Like, whether you like it or think it's tasty or not is that's your personal choice. But it's why Costa is successful, because people like that coffee. They get used to that coffee. They get used to that service, that smell, that environment, and then they'll go there. So I think for me, it was most important to get that right.
Do you feel like you have?
Yeah, through buying bits of kit that like I researched really heavily to enable me to create coffee that is consistent, and then milk that's consistent, and then factoring in other elements like the environment, so that that's welcoming and always the same, and people know what they're going to get, because that's just what it's all about, really. Yeah.
And how's Capes sort of changed from day one, starting out Capes, what you thought it was going to go? Has there been much change in that year, sort of after a year's worth of learnings?
Really, it has been just those learnings, because like in order to see change like we've seen at Duke's and the businesses here, you have to be trading for quite a long time, because really, like, other than kind of little tweaks to menu offering and stuff that I thought would work that hasn't, the major things I'm still fleshing out, really. So like, you know, having a product that you think is going to work and then doesn't really sell, or the price point isn't right, they're just kind of like the day-to-day weekly things. So they're small changes, but in terms of the grand scheme of things, I think like it would be a change that you could maybe foresee would be switching from X to Y. I don't really know what that would be yet, but like I think that will happen at some stage, but I don't know what it will be. But it's only little tweaks at the moment, because I'm still kind of working out what the hell to do, how to do it.
What are the specifics that you're working out? You know, what hasn't worked for you in that year?
Scooped ice cream is like really tricky, because it's a more expensive product now. Like it's if you buy something decent, I've worked with Jude's, it's a very heavy ice cream, so it's not got lots of air in it. So like cheaper ice creams fill their ice cream tub with air and an ice cream, obviously, but that means that it costs less. Like, long story short, it's more air than ice cream. Whereas Jude's is quite expensive because it's very heavy, thick, less air. So when you scoop it, in theory, it will melt more like a lot slower. So you've got more ice cream for your scoop, but visually it doesn't look as big as other ice creams. So, you know, you're there serving someone a cone, and you're psychologically thinking, oh, I need to give them a bit more. That looks a bit small, looks a bit stingy. And they're thinking, that's what I'm getting. Like, so you end up giving them a little bit more, and then that little bit more over 100 ice creams over a day turns into 3 tubs, and all of a sudden your margin is just gone.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like, when you're saying about changes, I'm thinking, well, actually, scooped ice cream, there's lots of other places in town that do scooped ice cream with more flavours than I can offer. Why not focus on soft serve, or Mr. Whippy as it's traditionally been called, because that's a huge growth area in America, who are kind of like the leaders in fast casual food.
Very much so.
Yeah, so that's where I'm kind of leaning towards more now, because of speed of service. I've got a machine that can do 2 different flavours, which is unique to my competitors in town, so I can offer different flavours of soft ice cream instead of just traditional vanilla. So that's one of the things that was like, wow, like, I'm serving lots of scooped ice cream, but a family of 5 come up and it's like, okay, little Billy will have a strawberry and a vanilla. I'll have a mint chocolate chip and a salted caramel, and it's like, to do one order, not only are you in the freezer taking off all these lids and getting covered in ice and ice cream, you're then having to do individual scoops as you go. Whereas if you have soft serve and some great toppings and another flavour, it's almost like, wow, bam, 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 here you go. Something different to what they've tried. I mean, it may backfire. It might not work. Like, people might be like, where's my mint chocolate chip scoop? And I might be like, right, okay, get the freezer out. But that's been the one thing for the first year, actually, when you say about the changes that I'm thinking about kind of bringing in.
It's really small stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Add up over a very long period
Yeah, you know,
of
you're
time.
doing 1,000 ice creams over X amount of time, and all of a sudden, if you're giving away too much, you're kind of losing a margin. But it's very hard. It's like I say, it's that visual perception of stuff. It's like we spoke about Roy Sutherland before we started, and he talks about psychology and marketing and decision making and how people look at things and buy things. It's not all about price. It's about what you're getting and what you're seeing around you. And I think the ice cream thing gave me real stresses last summer. I was giving away too much because I was thinking, oh my God, that's a bit of a stingy scoop. So, yeah.
And what's been the best thing about running Capes this year?
It's a bit cheesy, but I would say like the community of people, and just like seeing that develop over time. It's really like, you don't, although on the surface, you know, it's like, okay, you're going to take loads of money, it's busy, it's an ice cream parlour, like it's challenging. Like, you have days where it rains and you shut and you have 0 revenue. So, you know, it's so much more than just kind of a get rich quick, like, I'm going to make loads of money from selling loads of ice cream, because A, ice cream is expensive, B, I'm using a really great coffee from Roastworks, which is more expensive than you could pay for other stuff. So like those glory days of ice cream being like 99% margin, or whatever you want to call it, like you're literally printing money, they're kind of gone. You've got more competitors, you're up against the weather. So it doesn't just come down to kind of what's left in the till at the end of the day, as often is the case when you're starting out. So you have to kind of draw like your motivation and inspiration and kind of your rewards in the short term from what you create and what people feed back. So that's kind of the biggest thing really, is the community.
Definitely. Your I suppose your main product is coffee, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's interesting what you say there with the whole price point with coffee. You obviously spend a little bit more on your coffee.
Yeah.
And you feel like that bring more people in. Do you think people actually look at the price of coffee anymore?
I don't know. I think it depends on the customer, but also like whether they're really into it or not, where they normally go. Like one of my regular customers earlier was saying that his price of his latte at Costa had gone up by 40p. And actually, I don't think the price has gone up itself, but they charge for alternative milk, whereas I don't. So, you know, he's going in and buying a latte that's already 35p more than my starting price, and then they're charging him another 40p for his alternative milk. So it takes it like to £4.10 for a standard latte. I think if people switch and come over to you, they might notice a saving, or they might think you're more expensive. But I think on the whole, most people will glance at a menu and be like, okay, it's around like the £3.50, £3.20 mark. If you're charging £4, people are going to be like, whoa, that's a lot. But I don't think on the whole they do, because most, unlike some industries or some food types, like some places charge, I don't know, £15 for a steak, but then you go to London and it's like the same steak weight, but it's at what's his salt-based place, and it's exceptionally expensive. So, and there's different gradings of that product, whereas coffee, like a lot of people won't know what Roastworks is, but they'll see that I've got good equipment and they'll be like, okay, it's probably a bit better than normal. But people of our generation and people that drink coffee regularly wouldn't bat an eyelid, I don't think. But it doesn't mean I'm not conscious of putting prices up.
Yeah. I also think that, I don't know, it might be my age, but I feel like one of the things that I do at the weekend is go for a coffee, and it's that experience, and a lot of people do that, whether it's going for a coffee or an ice cream. And I think COVID has definitely helped with people wanting to be outside and socializing with friends and really making that of a thing. So I personally, if I'm going for a coffee, I'm going for a coffee. Like, it doesn't matter what the price is, you just get it, don't you?
It comes back to what we spoke about the pub. Coffee shops and places like Capes are the new pub. Because like you're spending what you used to spend on a pint on a cup of coffee, you've got exactly the same things. Like the drink, whether it's a pint or coffee, is kind of irrelevant, like you say, because the main thing you're going for is the experience. So I think that's like why there's more coffee shops opening in town. People are like, oh, another coffee shop. It's like, it doesn't matter, because that's where people go and spend their time now. They don't go to the pub anymore. Like you'll go and sit and have a coffee, and it's affordable, although it's a treat. Like, you know, there's people that say, I'm saving £400 a month by not going for my coffee, I'm making it at home, but it's still more affordable than going to the pub. So it's definitely the right place to be, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, really valid point. What do you want Capes to be known for?
I think atmosphere and the experience of just the whole thing, rather than like just the product, because you can talk about product all you want, you can have the best product you want, like it doesn't really matter unless the rest of it kind of fits in. And I'm not saying that's the complete the finished article, so to speak, but like for me, my kind of concept of and how I think about it moving forward is like hitting all the senses, because that's what the industry is really. Like if you actually think about when you go into a venue, like you smell it, you look at it, like you taste it, it's so much more than just the one thing that you're dealing with. So like having a candle, for example, which I do, that's flavored like ice cream, having the music on, having palm trees, having little touches around that people notice and see. You come to a counter and you look at the picture of Pamela Anderson and David Hasselhoff on the back wall, that makes you smile. Then you smell the candle and it smells like vanilla. Then you're greeted by me or someone who's smiling, engaging, and then you have your loyalty card. Like, you're hitting all the senses rather than just a transactional thing of, oh, that's a great tasting coffee and it's quite good value, but this is a soulless venue. So for me, it's creating like an all-encompassing, it's hard to say when it's like the same size as a shipping container and sometimes it's hammering it down. But if I was to expand, which I would like to do, it's creating something that is like completely different to your average like coffee shop and venue, really.
Great answer. Wasn't expecting that.
That is a great answer. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but what are your plans then you touched on expanding?
Well, I'm converting a 23-foot boat. I've told you this, haven't I?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. I really wanted a second site, but like obviously this is what we were saying about planning and being realistic. Like all of a sudden I'm like, wow, that's worked. People love capes, but you know, you don't. Often people won't expand until 10 years into their journey of having one site. You know, you hear stories of Five Guys and these guys that expand quickly, but their growth comes years after they've proven the concept. So like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I want to get the brand in front of Exmouth audience or Topsham audience where it's a bit younger and probably understand like the surfing side of it and the water sports side of it and whatever else. But I've got to remind myself not to like run before I can walk. And the boat kind of project is a little bit of a halfway house between going full into a different venue somewhere and like having to borrow money and like realistically never going to happen because I'm got all my debt from my first site, like hold your horses kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the boat kind of came around. I was like, right, how can I test the water? Pun intended there. Yeah. So
nice.
Of a different venue or a different town where that might work a bit better. And it's like, okay, everyone's converted horse boxes. You know, they're inflated in price. Like to do a full trailer that you stand in is like 20k. I haven't got that kind of money, but like I was like a boat would be quite cool because like it fits with the brand perfectly. We're by the sea. It will stay on the trailer. So I bought a boat on eBay for 800 quid.
Oh my God.
In Cornwall without seeing it. I drove down with my friend Ross, who's converting it, and went and got it, and it was way better than expected. I think the guy was just had like, I don't know, margarine all over his phone or something because the pictures were horrendous. And I had loads of texts coming through saying, "You're mad, you're an idiot. Looks like the wheels are going to fall off the trailer," and all that kind of stuff. So went and got it, and we're bringing that back, and I'm actually converting that into like a mobile version of the kiosk. Whether it will be ready in time, whether I can afford to do it, I don't really know. But that's kind of what I like doing. Like I can't help but think of things that I'm gonna do. So that's the next stage for that, and that will hopefully be able to go to local places, set it up at a festival, do a wedding or whatever, just to get it out there. But long term, I'd love to have a capes in each of like the main towns on the Jurassic Coast because I think that like those two classic things of coffee and ice cream and potentially other seaside products, like they're so loved and so like common at the seaside, but that doesn't mean they should be average. Like you should be able to get a coffee that you can get in central London on the coast.
Do you feel like it is quite average around here?
I think in the UK in general, I was lucky enough to go to Australia in January. I took some time off and we were closed here and it was hammering it down. So there's no one better in the world at the Aussies at coffee. Their coffee culture and cafe culture in the mornings is just insane. And I think that kind of showed me how far, well, not how far behind, how much we're in a completely different place in the UK. Like chains dominate the coffee market still. So I think independent coffee has got a long way to go in terms of more people embracing it and selling it. There's still some unbelievable small venues around that are like locally that I think are like smashing it. Guys in Exeter, Exploding Bakery, and there's people that are doing it really well, but like not like in Oz where you go to every town and there's 3 independents that are producing like award-winning coffee. So I think that's like what I would aim to try and aspire to, is to have places on the beach that, you know, are selling like classic items, but they're better than anyone's tasted before at the seaside. So would be the dream. Yeah.
That is a lovely dream. I'm excited for it to happen.
Yeah, thanks.
Pretty nice. You'll have boats, horse boxes, venues.
Yeah.
You'll have the lot.
Just me driving between them stressed. Screaming at people in lanes. Yeah.
Definitely. Should we move on to slightly more businessy sort of questions?
Yeah.
But, you know, have you always had a business head? Where did that come from?
I wouldn't say, actually business-wise, I'm pretty hopeless, I would say, in terms of like the actual nitty-gritty of like structuring and the finances. I'm terrible at. Like my brain does not work in that way. I've never had a mathematical brain in terms of anything to do with kind of cash flow or all of those kind of things. I'm just not very good at that. That's why Jo and I work so well in the hotels, because she is super like hot on spreadsheets and budgeting, and I'm kind of like the ideas person, say, oh, should we do that? And she's like, no, that's not going to work because it's going to cost too much, or we haven't got the budget for it right now. So that's really not been my strong point, but it's something that when you surround yourself with the right people, you can kind of get through. Business brain, I don't know, like I would say more kind of just ideas, and just I can't not think about stuff. Like if I see something, I question why it's working, why it's not working, who's doing it, where they're doing it, like what it looks like in 5 years time, and what motivated them. I'm just obsessed with how I built this, the podcast that Guy Raz does over in America, that they talk about business journeys from founding, and just hearing people talk about what they've done and what they've learned, and I would say more ideas than out and out business, really.
Yeah. And what have been the biggest challenges for you when setting up these businesses?
I think the actual, well, I guess like going back to the money thing, like without that being kind of my biggest hang up, like I think budgeting, especially for Capes, because the hotels are kind of like well established and Joe's all over it, and they're a proven business concept that it's going to generate revenue, and you've got 70 years plus of trading. Capes is kind of new, and it was like, right, okay, well, I've got like the money set up and savings ready to go to work out what I'm going to do with it. And it's like, well, where do I spend that? Where do I budget? What do I prioritize? So that was something that was a real challenge. I did relatively well with keeping in budget, and like the day-to-day I'm not very good at in terms of keeping on top of that now. Like luckily I've got a new bookkeeper who's going to help with that, but that was the biggest challenge for me. It was making sure it all added up. I worked with Polly again on the brand and concept, and I don't think it comes easily to me, but that's what I enjoy the most. Like that's what we work really well together on that side of things. So drawing inspiration from like surf culture and the 80s, 90s, beach, nostalgia obviously is huge for our generation. We're all looking back and thinking, oh God, the 90s were epic. Like, it was bright and colourful and cool, and there were no phones. But I think that was the side that I enjoyed the most. But yeah, the challenging side was the financial stuff. But yeah.
What advice would you give to Tom Seward 20 years ago, thinking about setting up his own business, Annings? What advice would you give to that young Tom?
I think maybe not to worry about it like as much as I probably did at the time, because it's only natural to worry about stuff when you're in that situation. Like we do it with everything, don't we? Not just work. But I think really just kind of going with the flow and not worrying, like, because at the time, at that stage, because of how we set it up, like I hadn't I sold a car to put my share of the money in, but I'm talking like a convertible VW, kind of regrettable young man car that you get, and like you realise actually it was a stupid thing to buy, so probably better off putting the money into the company. But it wasn't like my house was on the line, or my, I still did it alongside another job, which actually drove me a little bit loopy and probably was one of the reasons that I burnt out. But like, if you actually step back from it, unless you're kind of borrowing a huge amount of money, which most people, if they're starting something small on the side, wouldn't be doing, because it does start as a hobby most of the time. Like only in kind of Silicon Valley do you hear of people being like, I've got a concept, I'm going to an equity house, I'm going to get £1 million. That doesn't really, I don't know, as far as I can kind of see, most stories you hear of people starting out, it's with friends and family money, or it's with savings. So it's, unless you're kind of borrowing a huge amount, really what's the worst that can happen? Like you might lose a few £1,000, which at the time, that's a lot of money. But realistically, in the grand scheme of things, you're going to come out with it with a huge amount of valuable experience, which is kind of what I did. Yeah. So not to worry too much about it if it's possible. Yeah, take it easy and go with the flow. Learn from it, I guess.
Okay, well, moving on to the success side of things now, Tom.
Yeah.
Do you think you're successful? And that can be professionally. Let's go with professionally first.
I don't know. I guess from the feedback that I've had from treating it as Capes alone, like, which is the only thing kind of that I've done recently on my own, I would say that has been a success in terms of the feedback and the following, and however many thousand free coffees I gave away last year because of how many we sold. Whether that's me, I guess, like I've steered that and created it. So yeah, but in terms of like, I'm never satisfied because there's always more to be done. So I don't really kind of sit there and think, oh great, well, good job, like you've done well, because you're never really finished when you're entrepreneurial or business minded. You've always got that thing you're critiquing yourself on, or thinking I need to change that, or that could be better. So It's a bit of a weird question to answer without sounding like I'm like, yeah, I've achieved it all, because I haven't. Like, there's so much more to be done. There's so much that could be better.
Yeah.
But do you feel like you're on track?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. If we had sunshine, then it would be a game changer. Because it's basically sun powered in terms of the traffic. But I think we're on the right track. Yeah.
I agree. And what about in your personal life?
I would like to be doing more exercise. I've prioritised business over kind of that side of things. So when I put my mind to something outside of work, you know, I don't want to say Iron Man because it's quite a topic of conversation. Yeah, it's a buzzword within the Konker setup. But having achieved that a few years ago, and then kind of focusing more on myself and fitness and health at that stage, I knew that I was kind of in a better place away from that. But that was when I was like in a secure job with the hotels, and like I had a bit more structure, and that kind of all goes out the window when you start your own business in terms of like the setup stage. And then at this first year, staffing it myself, being there like all day, every day, that kind of becomes a lower priority when actually it needs to be the most important thing you focus on. So this year I kind of set myself a goal of being like, right, I need to get that back. So like I would like to think that I could be more successful in my health and fitness side of things, but I've got an amazing fiance and a great puppy and a loving family, so I think I'm pretty fortunate and successful in that sense. Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to people in a similar position to you? So I'm sure there's so many business owners out there that feel like, you know, they're putting all of their time and effort into their business, and that kind of lack in self, like being able to fill that cup up.
Yeah,
what kind of advice would you give?
It's time, isn't it? Like, even if you step away from the business for half a day and get out of that mindset and that zone, you instantly notice a difference. And like if I go out for a walk with a dog or go for a run, like I'm like trying not to listen to a business podcast, because like then you're instantly still in that zone. You're still in that mindset. Like, oh, actually, I'm thinking about that. Oh, how could that affect capes? Like, whereas actually, if you go out and you just go out and like clear your head, you may think about it, but you don't think about it in the same depth and don't analyze yourself. You're just out enjoying yourself. So I think like having an actual break, even if it's only half a day or a day, like where you break fully from the kind of day-to-day stuff, is probably more effective than maybe even having a week off when you're on your phone or on Instagram or on replying to emails, because you're never really making that clean break. So for me, that's what I'm going to have as my Monday, is going to be like, right, get on my bike and go away from my laptop. So I'm completely away from it all, because realistically, what can go wrong? Like, how badly can stuff go wrong? Like, that's what I learned, especially during COVID. It's like, we aren't performing heart surgery here, we're serving people food. So although people were screaming at you and we want a table and we want that, it's like, realistically, like we're not performing heart surgery. Like, if they're unhappy or they don't get a table, it doesn't matter. Like, in the grand scheme of things, that's also something that you have to remember when you're in this industry. Is like, realistically, things can go badly wrong, but like you aren't doing anything that's going to change like too much.
It's an interesting point actually, in terms of like what you said about giving yourself a proper break, because you may give yourself, like you say, a couple of days off over the weekend, but still be so immersed in your phone or listening to podcasts which are all business specific, and you don't actually switch your mind off and concentrate on something else.
No, exactly.
So there is so much benefit to having other things going on outside of your life, where you completely take yourself away from just business or just work.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to find that yourself, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
And I know you said, you know, you're kind of on track to feeling successful, but have you had a point across any of your journey, it doesn't have to be just with capes, that you have felt like you're successful, or you started to feel like it?
I think like the fact that Annings is still going, although under the guidance of Jim and the guys at Tolchards, the fact that it's still going, and like they've changed a few things, they've changed some branding and added some new flavors and stuff, but the fact that the concept is still there and the name is still there and it's still out there, that's, I guess, it's a success. When people send me pictures of it still, or it pops up somewhere, that's a success in my opinion. Like, that was something that never existed and now it does. And I think like the same could be said for anything when you create a brand, like, or actually it doesn't even matter if it's a brand, you can still like have things that don't exist and that you bring to life, even if you're in a corporate role. Like, I think that people shouldn't always focus on like the creative industry and creating brands as successes, because you can still be creative in a corporate environment. But I think for me, like seeing someone walking along like I did in town earlier, like the other day, with the Capes keyring on their keyring, like I knew who she was and I knew she was a regular customer, but that wouldn't be there if I hadn't been doing what I was doing. And I think when you do bring something into the world, whether it's business or internally in a business, inside a company, and make a change, like that's success in my opinion. I think like as long as you're contributing towards someone's daily life or towards the running of a business, like it's success.
That is a really lovely point. That kind of answers the main question, but I'll still ask you.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give to somebody that's trying to work out what they want to do?
Oh my goodness, I don't know, because I've always known that it's food and drink for me, because of kind of what I've been brought up in, and that's what I'm passionate about. I say that, but obviously Min's wasn't that. But I think really that was a reassurance and a reminder that actually not stick to what you're good at, because it's a lot easier to put in those extra hours and to like feel inspired by something day to day if it's something that you would know and love. Like I that doesn't always apply, because obviously like you guys are in the recruitment industry. Like, does that necessarily make you think, oh, that's really exciting? Like, you can be in any industry. Like, you don't have to like love the actual topic or the subject or what the product is, but having something that you can get passionate about is definitely really useful. And also, if it's something you know, like when you get questioned on it, you're not having to learn a whole new subject. Like you guys can start a new project internally, but like you get excited about it because it's brand new, but it's in like your remit, so like you can definitely tap into it and really feel excited about it. And I think that if you are starting to do something, like just because something's like can make you a quick buck, or could be something that's fashionable, or could be something that could be big, if it's something that's completely outside your remit, it's very hard to like latch onto it and really feel passionate about it.
Go on, you go.
I can't remember where I heard this the other day, but it was really interesting, and I'd be interested to hear your point of view on it. Are you passionate about something straight away, or is it more of a case of you try something, you start to enjoy it, and then develop a passion for it?
I think it depends, like on maybe on the person, but also what it is. Like, I guess I think like for me, I was immersed in the food and drink environment from the start. You
didn't know any different.
Yeah,
did
exactly.
You? So did you have that passion straight away? Could you easily
I don't know.
say you had that passion straight away, or did you develop it?
I think it developed as I grew up, and it was like, maybe actually I am quite good at the hospitality thing. Like, I go into this zone where you're serving people in like probably a completely different character to what I am normally. I think that like people may start something, it might go completely the other way to what I've said. Yeah. It might be like they pick a subject, pick a thing that they're selling, because it like could make them a lot of money, but then actually they become really good at it, and that then drives them more than the money, because they want to make that a success and they really buy into the product. So it's a bit of a muddled way of answering it, but I don't know, like for me it's been so obvious, but I don't know for you, like
exactly.
It's pretty good.
It's probably recruitment, like I didn't know all of my life that I had a passion for recruitment.
Exactly.
I tried it and now I have a passion for it. So what's the takeaway from this? If you don't discover a passion until you've tried something and got good at it and developed a love for it, you're not going to be passionate about anything until you go out there and try as much as possible.
But I also think, like, in the same breath that you've always been in the food and drink industry, it might be for some people that because they've always been immersed in that industry, they don't want any part of 100%. They don't want to
absolutely
be involved with it.
And that's kind of like how I feel towards certain elements of the bigger businesses and the bigger traditional like style like industry. It's really rewarding, but also exceptionally challenging, because it's like a 24-hour business. Whereas the best part about Capes in terms of like the more life balance element is that you're selling a product that really people don't necessarily want after 7 p.m. at night. So you can close and you can go home, and you have the best parts of hospitality in terms of meeting people, greeting people, making people happy. But you aren't getting called in the middle of the night because someone's fallen out of bed, or there's a water leak, or whatever it may be that comes with this style of hospitality business. So I think for me that's like one of the main kind of motivators for that.
Has your definition of success changed over time?
I don't know, because I've always kind of like seen my grandparents and then my parents working very hard, and like the results of that have been success in terms of like the business is growing and having repeat customers and, you know, being well regarded as a successful operator. But for me personally, I think it's just maintaining, like having the drive to maintain that and get better. And the result of that, I don't think I'll ever get to a point where it's like you said about reflecting on whether I'm successful or not. I think it's just an onward going journey. So I think for me, it's like, okay, how do you measure it? Like you can measure it just by financial or by awards or by, I don't know, whether you get like loads of reviews or compliments or whatever. But I don't know, for me, it's just, it's a bigger thing than that. I think it's just like,
doesn't sound like for you there's a point where you can say, right, I will be successful if I do this.
Yeah.
It is more of a process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Continual progression.
It's not like winning a medal and being like, I've got my medal and I've accomplished that, because like business in particular is like a journey, isn't it? So that's cheesy, but it's true. Like, you know, so.
Well, they say if you enjoy the process, you know, more than the actual end goal, then you will hit your end goal, because you know, you're
enjoying the process.
Yeah, and that will be the success as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you're kind of focusing on getting it right, like whether you know it or not, you're becoming successful. Like, I think.
So, what does success look like for you in 5 years then? Where does the process take you?
We've said there's no goal and it's a process, but give us your 5 years.
I would say, you know, having more than one site, and the sites individually being. Well, I mean, the most important thing is that they make money and actually are successful in terms of being able to continue, let alone like creating a brand and being like, oh, it's a really cool place to come. Yeah. Okay, that's fine, but you still have to sell the product. So, you know, you can say you have 2 sites, 3 sites, whatever, but you need them to be functioning. So I guess like that would be a success, like clean cut, like they're making money.
Yeah.
That's where I could apply that element of it.
Yeah.
In terms of the like lovey-dovey kind of brandy kind of thing, it's like, well, I don't know, it's continuing, isn't it? It's getting in front of more people.
Well, I suppose it'll be, you know, not to answer the question for you, Tom, but I suppose it'll be, you know, when you have found that balance of having time for your personal stuff, doing the exercise, and also being able to enjoy, you know, the business and going out for your dog walks and not listening to the podcast and all of that stuff, having that balance. Yeah,
that's probably more of it. Like, it'd be more of an accomplishment for me to be able to separate that, I think, and like realize that, you know, there's more to it than just being here. But at this moment in time, I'm struggling with that and I need to get better at it. But I think, you have answered it way better than I could have done. But
okay, so moving on to something different now, a couple of short, quicker questions.
Okay.
What content or material should people be consuming in your sector?
As the customer, sorry, like
I suppose as maybe we should answer it more as like a business owner, somebody in hospitality wanting to grow, first of all, progress.
I think there's so much stuff out there, isn't there, in terms of resources, whether it's kind of, I don't know, like viral stuff, or whether it's stuff you actually go into and read, like a course or something more serious. But I don't know, I just like seeing what other people are doing, and also looking at kind of the trends within the industry, but also not getting too carried away in that, because obviously a lot of stuff is quite faddy. But I would say looking at like people that you aspire to be like, not ripping people off, but like looking and learning from what they're doing, whether that's through like email newsletters that are kind of specific to you, or just following people that inspire you and like give you the ideas that you need to kind of
give us specifics.
In terms of actual people?
Yeah, well, hospitality specific content. What's out there that people can, if somebody in hospitality, really passionate about the industry, wants to build a really good career of it, what should they be going to? What can they go to?
There's Code Hospitality, which is an email like newsletter that comes out every Monday, which is kind of a combination of like they hold a list of reviews of places that are launching. So they've got a summary of people that are coming into the industry, opening new restaurants, people that are leaving places or going on to start new things. So that kind of gives you a weekly insight into what's happening in like the wider industry. You know, I'm not talking about like necessarily small scale or family owned stuff, but say a well-known restaurateur is closing one place and opening another, you can keep an eye on that. And then from there, you can go and look at their Instagram. And it's quite a good place to start the week, because it gives you an insight into that. There's other like email newsletters that are more kind of specific to like the kind of nitty gritty of like HR or like that kind of thing. In terms of people on socials, like following the big name chefs, if you're into food, like a lot of them are quite good at showing not only what they're doing in cooking, but the other sides of the industry. But I think on the whole, the industry still has quite a lot of work to do with regards to like speaking about the stuff, the non-pretty stuff. Like there's a setup called Hospitality Action, which supports kind of like the behind the scenes of people that are struggling with the industry. So there's always that place to reach out to if you're like in a bit of a weird place with regards to how you're working, where you're working, what they're paying you. You know, that's kind of a good resource if you're kind of going through a trickier time with it. So it's not all like the shiny Instagram champagne kind of stuff. There's other support networks you can have behind the scenes as well.
What's your favourite restaurant?
Blimey.
And why?
Restaurant.
What's your favourite hotel?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. Favourite hotel. I'm trying to think where I've stayed. I don't go away as much as I should, really. It's a bit of a basic answer, but Babington House, which is part of the Soho House group, is amazing in Somerset. They just do things really, really well.
What do they do well?
It's just really homely, I think. Again, and like they hit the senses, like I said about with Capes. Like you go in and it's like good lighting, it smells nice. Like the service is usually quite good. Sometimes it's a little bit dodgy, but most of the time it's pretty good. You get a nice welcome, and again, it comes back to that consistency. You know what you're going to get. Like there's the same menu items on like available, and you feel comfortable and you can relax into it. Again, a bit like a home away from home kind of thing. Other hotels. Honestly, I wish I could go away more, but I don't.
Jukes.
Yeah. I'll have a think. Hang on. Yeah, carry on. Let's go.
Well, this might require some more thinking, Tom.
Goodness.
Who has been or who is your biggest inspiration in your sector, and why?
Close to home, I would be like, it's really cheesy, but it is like my family who've been here before me, my grandparents and my mum and dad, and Jo, who is our GM, who's like my second mum within work. Like they're all so inspiring, and it is cheesy, but you don't really get that outside like family businesses. But saying that, Jo isn't family, but we've worked together for so long that you do have that feeling. They worked in the hotel when it was completely different, and it was just them and a few other staff. So them locally and internally, like they're the ones that I kind of want to make proud the most. They're the ones I want to be a success for. In the wider industry, actually, to be fair, with what I've been focusing on more recently, it's people in America. Like there's Alfred Coffee, which is a chain in America. Like the guy who founded that has also got another drinks company. So there's a couple of things there that I've looked at and thought, wow, like they're doing some amazing stuff. There's also a couple of Australian guys that have got a chain of cafes in LA and around there that are doing amazing things called Great White. So they're quite inspirational. A couple of other people that operate like soft serve and ice cream places in New York and Philadelphia that are doing just insane stuff with that. So not that the UK scene is like dead. It's not at all, but like where I'm looking more specifically with the stuff that I'm selling, that seems to be where it's happening.
Why isn't the UK doing these sort of, scenes or things as well as these other countries?
I think we're probably a little bit further behind on like the gastronomical journey than a lot of places. Like not even at like a high end kind of level. Like obviously we've now got loads of Michelin star restaurants, and the British food is like miles ahead of where it used to be. Like the French will still look down on it or whatever else, but we've still got some great chefs and amazing restaurants. So I think we're getting there. But like in terms of like innovation, like I think because America is just so like they chase the dream. They're always looking for new things, and I think they're just way more adventurous with stuff. They'll try like crazy things and unhealthy things and not care about anything, and that's how some of the most like successful products and companies have launched, because they've been dreamers really. Whereas here I think we're quite traditionalists, aren't we? We like to know what we know, like what we know, and we don't necessarily want to venture too far. So I'm not saying that a lot of the stuff that's not coming out of there is a load of rubbish. Like a lot of it may not take, but you can't argue that they haven't influenced, like, especially the sector that I'm in now with regards to coffee and like fast food / treats and sweets and stuff. So yeah.
How do you think your industry will change in the next 5 years?
I think we'll see loads more stuff around like delivery and pre-ordering. So, you know, not just like apps, not just in terms of delivery, but like say you guys are on your way into your office and you order ahead at, you know, for using an example, Costa, you're going to put your order in with them and you're going to go and collect it. And then when you get there, like your interaction with the human will probably be minimal because you'll be driving up to the side counter and you'll be collecting your coffee. I think that like in certain areas within hospitality, away from like your high end, like Uber service orientated, I think you're going to see more ordering terminals and self-checkout style stuff. Like at McDonald's, you've got your terminals because less staff costs. People actually spend more at a self-service terminal because they don't feel under as much pressure and scrutiny to not order unhealthy stuff. So I think that will become more common in like casual dining places. So I think you'll see more people like putting self-ordering kiosks and stuff in. I don't know if like the AI kind of chat is going to massively affect the customer service in terms of like physical bringing stuff to tables. I've seen some robots that drop plates off at tables and stuff, but I think it will massively affect like reservations and online booking. I think that automation of that process is going to probably eat into the human reservation element, which we've seen already, like chatbots and the ability to book a lot quicker and a lot easier. That will affect, I think, the reservation side of things. But I don't think you'll get away for a long time from people serving people food at a table. Whether that, like, you know, that's the change for that would be collecting it from somewhere, but that's not really like a tech change. That's more, I think, just something that people would do as preference. But I think like ordering and phones and menus on digital screens is going to be the big change, I think.
Will you jump into that? Will you get involved?
It could work quite well at Capes if you're there on your own, because you could have a kiosk at the end of the kiosk where people could put their order through, and you can still greet and talk to those people and still be the physical presence. But I don't think it's almost the right environment for it. If I had a site in Exeter where you've got a younger student demographic and they could pre-order on their phone or on an app, or they could come in and stand at a kiosk, I 100% think it would work.
Yeah, I agree.
I think with what you're trying to do, or what it sounds like you're trying to do, it's less about the actual product and more about the service.
And in terms of tech as well, just to talk about coffee machinery without getting too nerdy about that, the company we spoke about earlier, Blank Street, who are a coffee chain that are going to basically take over the world, they have kind of focused on equipment. The coffee equipment itself is like a machine that costs 25 grand entry level. They go up to more than that, but it has everything built into it to be able to make coffee consistently without learning how to steam or anything. So they've invested heavily in the machinery, but that means that they have to train baristas up. So they're people that work there are more like customer service agents that put the coffee together. So their overheads are way lower than training other places. So I think places will buy into more automated equipment to make products more consistent and to make service faster. So I think that's something that I would actually have learnt from there with my automated stuff, as well as to make it let some of the equipment do the work for you. So I think that's why that they'll be successful. So that's another change away from like your traditional AI. Actually, the equipment that you're using to make the product is getting way better as well.
What is the best technology that you're currently using?
I've got an automatic milk steamer called a Perfect Mousse, which is amazing. Like,
great name.
It is. I can't stand. I'm really bad at steaming milk. Like, and I'm not like a traditional barista where I've come into it and I'm like, right, I've learned it from going in there really. Like we had a coffee machine at Duke's and blah, 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 but that's years ago, and coffee is so different now. So having that and a couple of other bits and bobs, like the grinder that grinds to weight, and they're all little things that take away areas of margins for error. But the milk steamer is the one that is just amazing. I couldn't live without it. It's epic.
Life-changing.
It is.
Is this sort of technology, advanced technology, or is it pretty basic stuff but just does such a good job for you?
I think the mousse is pretty advanced.
Is it?
Because like the jugs have got a chip in the bottom, like each one's programmed for the milk type. They're all programmed for the different type of milk. So I've got one green one which is for oat and one dairy one which is like white. So you don't have to think about it. Your wastage is less because you're pouring it to the same level every time. It steams it to the same temperature. if there was one in every coffee shop in the UK, we would be in a far better place, because steaming milk is one of the harder bits. Like making the coffee itself, like, is actually a bit easier, but milk is where it often goes wrong, because people over steam it, it boils, the sugars go all over the shop, and it tastes horrible. So it is quite advanced, but I mean, I would have paid double what I paid for it, because it's helped with that whole mission of being consistent. So
yeah. And what is the best coffee you've ever had?
It would probably be at that the places in LA, Great White, because I mean, I don't even know if I can remember the coffee. The latte art was great, but when I spoke about the senses, like that place, like, is just, I don't know, it's two Aussie guys that have taken the best of Australian coffee culture and put it in Venice Beach, basically. And
what have they done?
I mean, all the things that I've like aspired to be there in terms of the ambience, the atmosphere. Like, it looks amazing. The people are really friendly. Like, the smell is great. The artwork's awesome. The food and products are like top quality, but they don't scream and shout about them, because that's obviously what you should have. Like, you go there and you feel something more than just going to get a cup of coffee. So, you know, that's a good case in point. Like, you could have it could have been bad, but it would have been the best coffee because of all of the things around you. So I think that's really the most inspirational thing, and probably why it's the best, because of everything about it.
It's not actually the beans, it's the experience.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that comes back to hospitality. Like, that's what I'm trying to create there. Like, you can go somewhere and it'd be a great cup of coffee, but like, if the barista's a bit like, you know, and...
Do we think now then, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, you go for a coffee, I've mentioned, you know, you don't necessarily look at the price, that coffee has actually now become all about the experience rather than the actual product. You go to get a coffee for the experience, not for the coffee.
I think you still have to get that like end product right, but I think that, again, like we say about the demise of pubs and drinking and stuff, I think it is really like part of people's day, and I think that if you can tap into that as much as anything else, then that's the kind of magic formula, really. Because I think it's just as important, like, especially in an environment where people are sitting in or they're around you, like, because, you know, if it's bad and they go away, like, they'll remember it being bad, but like, if everything else around you is quite great, then it brings it up altogether, doesn't it? So I think it's probably crucial to get that right, but way more important to get the other stuff right as well.
Brilliant. Well, Tom Seward, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. That's the end. If anybody wants to come and stay at your Sidmouth hotels, don't use booking.com.
Yeah, come direct. Come on, please. Please.
And come down to Sidmouth Seafront for a capes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks very much.
No worries.